From the outside, the Whitmore mansion looked like perfection. Glass towers, private gardens, a staff that worked like clockwork. But inside those towering walls lived a silence so heavy it broke hearts. Emma Whitmore, the only daughter of billionaire developer Charles Whitmore, was 6 years old and had never spoken a single word in her life. Doctors confirmed she wasn't mute, therapists assured she wasn't deaf, and specialists across continents had ruled out every known medical condition. Her vocal cords were fine, her hearing was perfect, yet her lips had never formed mama or papa. Margaret, her mother, wept silently at night, whispering to Charles that she felt like she was raising a ghost, present, breathing, smiling even, but never speaking. Charles, a man who built empires with steel and concrete, had no blueprint for this kind of problem. He threw millions at the silence, flights to New York, Boston, Zurich, consultations with the most expensive experts. But money had no sound. The silence swallowed his empire whole, until one Tuesday morning when a chance encounter shattered everything they thought they knew about Emma's world. That morning, she wandered out of the mansion gates and locked eyes with someone Charles would have never allowed into his orbit, a garbage man in orange overalls. Charles nearly collapsed when he saw his daughter standing so close to the man hauling trash bags. "Emma, come back here," he shouted, panic lacing his voice. But Emma didn't move. She stood frozen, staring at the worker as though she had discovered something magical. The man, Daniel Hayes, didn't treat her with the distant pity therapists did, nor with the pressure of wealthy parents desperate for results. Instead, he crouched down, looked her straight in the eye, and said gently, "Hey there, princess." Emma's lips curled into something Charles hadn't seen directed at a stranger before, a giggle. Silent but real. Charles wanted to drag her back inside, but Margaret grabbed his arm. "Wait, look at her," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "She's listening." The garbage man placed his heavy bag down, tapped it, and said in a calm, playful tone, "You know what this is? It's heavy like secrets, but when you open it up and let it out, it feels lighter." Emma leaned forward, her eyes locked on him. She didn't speak, but for the first time in years, her face showed a spark beyond quiet smiles. And in that moment, Charles and Margaret's world tilted. From that day on, Emma waited at the gate every morning when Daniel's truck rumbled down the street. She clapped when he lifted heavy bins, pointed at his gloves, and even left little treasures for him, a flower, a marble, a drawing with stick figures. Daniel treated each gift like it was gold. Margaret worked up the courage to introduce herself one morning. "I don't even know your name," she said softly. "Daniel Hayes," he replied with a smile. Charles, however, bristled. "Mr. Hayes, my daughter needs professionals, not small talk from strangers." Daniel didn't flinch. "Maybe she just needs someone who doesn't expect anything," he answered, before crouching down again to tell Emma about a cat that jumped into a bin the day before. Emma laughed without sound, her eyes brighter than Margaret had ever seen. That night, Margaret whispered, "Do you realize how many nights I begged God for anyone who could reach her? I don't care if he's a garbage man." "Look at her, Charles. She's alive with him." Charles had no answer, but for the first time in years, he felt something he thought was gone forever: hope. Weeks passed, and Daniel became part of Emma's world. He never pressured her to speak. Instead, he told her funny stories from his root, silly songs he sang when he worked, or tales about his old dog. Emma responded with gestures, silent laughter, or mimicking his movements. The more Daniel spoke, the more Emma leaned in, as though he was giving her a language without words. One morning, Charles did something unthinkable for a man obsessed with his empire. He put his phone away, took Emma by the hand, and walked her to the gate himself. When Daniel arrived, Charles didn't snap at him, didn't dismiss him. He simply nodded. Daniel greeted him with surprise, and for the first time, Charles crouched next to his daughter. "Emma," he said softly, "did I ever tell you about the time I nearly lost my tie in a revolving hotel door?" Emma froze, wide-eyed, then burst into silent giggles. Margaret watched from the window, tears streaming down her face. It wasn't words yet, but it was connection, something Charles's billions had never bought. For the first time, father and daughter were sharing a story together. From then on, their home transformed. Charles read Emma bedtime stories not as therapy, but simply to enjoy the closeness. Margaret sang while brushing Emma's hair, no longer desperate for a response, just happy for the smiles. They stopped treating Emma like a puzzle. Be solved, and instead embraced her as their daughter, silent, yes, but full of life. Every night Charles sat on the porch with Emma, watching stars. "Do you like them?" he whispered. She nodded. He kissed her head and said, "You don't have to say anything, I understand." Yet deep inside, he longed for her voice, even just one word. And then one warm afternoon, the miracle came. Emma ran to Daniel, clutching a drawing, two stick figures under a crooked sun. "Is this me?" Daniel asked. She nodded. "And this is you?" Another nod. He pointed at the sun. "And what's this?" For a long moment silence hung. Then Emma's lips parted, a whisper fragile but clear. "Happy." The world froze. Charles fell to his knees, tears streaming uncontrollably. "Emma, did you just—" he stammered. Daniel didn't cheer or overwhelm her. He just smiled and said gently, "That's right, princess, happy." Emma repeated, stronger this time, "Happy." Margaret collapsed against Charles, sobbing with joy. For 6 long years they had prayed for a word, and here it was, simple and pure. Emma's speech didn't suddenly flood out like a broken dam. It came slowly, shyly, one word here, another there. But every sound was a treasure. The silence that once haunted the mansion was now broken by laughter, whispers, and the most precious syllables in the world. One night Emma whispered "Mama" into Margaret's ear, and days later, "Papa" for Charles. For the Whitmores, it was wealth beyond skyscrapers and fortune. For the first time, their house felt like a home filled with life. Charles began to realize something profound. Emma hadn't been broken. She didn't need fixing. What she needed was trust, patience, and love that didn't demand results. Daniel, a man society overlooked, had given them that gift. One evening, Charles shook Daniel's hand firmly and said, "You gave us something no amount of money could buy, not words, but hope. Thank you." Daniel simply replied, "All I did was listen." As his truck pulled away, Charles watched Emma twirling barefoot on the lawn, her laughter filling the air. For years, Charles had built towers of steel to touch the clouds, but none of them ever gave him the feeling he had watching his daughter giggle in the sunlight. In her smile, he found a truth no empire could teach. Sometimes the most valuable voices in life aren't the loudest. They're the ones we wait for the longest. And so Emma's first word wasn't "mama" or "papa," but something far more powerful. Happy. A single word that carried 6 years of silence, 6 years of longing, and 6 years of prayers into one beautiful moment. For Charles and Margaret, it was proof that love can't be rushed, and healing doesn't always come from the experts. It sometimes arrives in the most unexpected form, like a garbage man who simply knew how to listen. Emma's voice came slowly, like blossoms opening one by one in spring, but with every new word her family learned to cherish not the sound of her speech, but the joy of her spirit. And maybe that's the greatest lesson. Sometimes the richest man in the city needs the humblest man on the street to remind him what truly matters. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who needs a little hope today. And tell us in the comments, where in the world are you listening from? We love hearing your stories too. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and always remember, the smallest voices often carry the greatest miracles.